What creates the chaos in your day-to-day reality, and how do you eliminate it once and for all? Do me a favor, watch this video, and you're gonna check it out all on today's podcast. Let's do it. Your mind is a beautiful thing, but if left unattended, it can get ugly real quick. If you're not constantly curating the content your mind consumes on a daily basis, then your surroundings will dictate your daily thoughts, habits, behaviors, and actions. This show has only one goal: to leave your mind more beautiful than it was when you arrived. Welcome to the Beautiful Mind Show. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jason Everett from Beautiful Mind Show, and I'm really excited to be talking about this subject today with my friend Holly Fox. What's going on, Holly? Glad to have you on today.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Super excited to be here today and talk all things.
Pumped to have you on. Do me a favor, guys. If you're on with us live, do me a favor and comment live. And we're talking, Holly, you're on today, so we got to be talking about chaos.
Of course we do. It's my life, man.
I know. But how many of you guys experience chaos in your day-to-day that can be overwhelming, debilitating, and it can take you out? If that's you, do me a favor, and can you please write chaos in the chat if you're on with us live and you're watching those videos, we're hanging out, or if you're watching it later on replay, still comment. We'd love to have you comment along with us. And what I want you guys to catch as we're talking about this today is that the idea that chaos in your reality can be self-created or externally created. Holly, I was just talking about this. We're doing a bunch of work around my property right now. And so we have all these contractors that come in and there's all this chaos that happens. And when all of that's going on, it can feel chaotic. It can slow us down or trip us up. And you realize, like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. I'm over my head. And I was actually interviewing somebody, or watching a video interview of somebody the other day who was interviewing for our company. And they said something that actually got my attention. And I want to say the best of my ability what they said, because I think it's really helpful. What they said is that when I work with a CEO, because for an executive assistant, right? When I work with a CEO, what ends up happening is when they seem chaotic and they seem scattered, it's usually because their level of organization, or whoever's helping them with their level of organization, does not have everything buttoned up. And I was like, I like this girl, right? Because I think she gets it. She gets that the enemy of chaos is organization. And when I looked at it, and I looked up the definition of chaos today, Holly, for the show, and the definition of chaos is complete disorder and confusion, right? A behavior so unpredictable as to appear random, not to be random, but to appear random, owing to great sensitivity to small changes in conditions. So what I loved about this, the way this gal responded to this, was she said, it appears random, it might appear scattered, but it's just a symptom of not being as organized as we need to be. And she's like, that's my job, is to make sure the organization is in place and the organization happens. Does this all make sense?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. In fact, when I've looked for assistance, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Like, I want to have the fun and know and make the things happen, but I need somebody else behind me to have that organization, that factor for it. Because then I get to operate in my level of genius.
Right. And I think that's it, is that when you understand, like, that the idea becomes that if you can get yourself organized, you can get yourself out of that chaos and really start to make some serious progress. Because as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as somebody that has a million things going on, like, this is kind of the reality I live in, is most people say something like, I don't know how you juggle all the things you juggle, Jason. Or Holly, have you ever heard somebody say that to you? Like,
oh
most
my
people
gosh,
go like,
all the time. Yeah.
I don't even know how you're a mom and you have these employees and you deal with this business and you do all these things. Like, that just sounds like so much chaos to me. But the way you get rid of chaos is through organization. Now, I don't mean like get yourself a Franklin planner, and like get yourself a planner and like start organizing. I mean, look, yes, one thing is getting a calendar and getting yourself organized for sure, but there's a million digital ways to do that to help get yourself organized. But it's not only getting yourself organized, but trying to figure out, how do you get a system in place for every single part of your reality? How do you get a system in place for your food that you're eating? How do you get a system in place for your management meetings? How do you get a system in place? And so somebody said this, as they said, I can tell how rich someone is by how many systems in place they have in their life.
Yeah.
I don't know if that impacts any of you guys that are watching the show that are hanging out with me right now,
Oh,
but I
good.
was like, wow, that's really powerful, right? If you think about, how systematically are you organized? And because I mean, the difference between having a system and not might be the difference between you having an extra several hours of your day,
Yeah.
right? I think that's really at the end of the day, when you talk about how do you unclutter your mind, there's some things you can do. You can like remove stress, you can eliminate distractions, you can do all those things. But I think it's like, how do you like what would be one removal of stress in your life, Holly, that you could solve with organization?
It's funny that you're saying that because, like, to me, it's calendars. When I talk about a Google Calendar and people are like, "Oh, I don't like Google Calendars. I don't like calendars." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, a calendar tells me exactly where I need to be for the majority of the day, and then I get to even block in like my self-care time or I'm going to read time." And I have 4 kids. My kids all have a calendar. Like, we have a family calendar that we share, and it makes it everybody knows where they're getting. And I don't leave kids at school anymore, so
Yeah.
it was huge.
Well, just making sure, I actually have one back here on my wall, but I've got a big annual calendar that's on my wall, and I think just getting that calendar clarity is a really big deal. And look, I know that some of you guys are like, "Yeah, Jason, thanks. I need to organize my calendar." I get it, but what I would say is like, what's the habit that you have around it?
Right.
Like my wife and I, at least once a week, will sit down and organize our calendar. And there's multiple calendars that we keep in our household. We have our household calendar for the kids. They look 1 week ahead. But my wife and I are typically looking a quarter to a year ahead on our schedule and on our calendar to make sure we're seeing a good perspective on like when are we going on vacation, what are we going to do, what's the travel schedule like, when are we going on vacations, when is school back in, and we're constantly going. Do the next 3 months, do the next 3 months really look like what we want them to look like? Because this is the other kiss of death that I think happens on a calendar, in my opinion, Holly, is that if your calendar sucks, it's your fault.
Yep.
Can we be really clear? Like my calendar sometimes can really suck, and people go, "Oh my god, your calendar stresses me out." And I'm like, well, it doesn't stress me out if it's got the things that I want to have on my calendar, right? Is like
Yeah.
figuring out what are the things that I can do that get. And by the way, I started this way: figure out what makes you happy in your day to day on your calendar. Is like for me, I know that if I'm in creating mode as often as possible on my calendar, creating cool things, making stuff happen, shooting podcasts, like this doesn't stress me out at all, right? To sit and
Right.
produce a podcast and do a show and like create content, I love that. You know what I don't like? I don't like sitting in meetings. I don't like sitting in meetings where I'm having the same conversation every single week. But you know what? There's other people on my team that absolutely love sitting in meetings and having that same conversation because they enjoy the consistency and they like refining it and making those small tweaks and details. Great. Let that be their calendar, not my calendar.
Yeah.
Brian
Agree.
Jones, what's up, Brian? Good to see you, by the way. Brian said the main system to combat chaos was organizing my personal life first, focusing on simplicity, downtime, exercise, diet, family first. Once I admitted I sabotaged my own life, the chaos decreased. You're a wise man, my friend. For those of you guys that don't know, Brian used to work for me back in the day. Great dude. And he's out doing his own thing now. I wish him well and everything that he does. He just runs some incredible thing. And yeah, you're right. Getting really clear, Brian, about what you want to have in your own life first, and then break it out to your business. I see this all the time, and Holly, maybe you see it as you're coaching with people too. But most people, when they have chaos in their business, it's because they have chaos at home.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And then they keep thinking, "Oh, I've got to change things in my business to get rid of my chaos." And it's like, if you actually focused on things at home and created systems at home, your business would replicate that and you would be way happier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And so I think that's a huge factor in being able to create a better life, is getting the home life and business life both sorted at the same time. But Holly, I want to talk about this. There's something that we both have studied that I think is really powerful, and it's called game confusion. So let me talk about this. If you're not familiar with this about game confusion, this is probably the number one area that I've seen people get off track on in their reality, is like they seem confused. And it's usually because they have something called game confusion. And let me give you an example. It's when you confuse the game that you're playing with another game that you sometimes play. So let me give you this frame. So if you were like, I got kids, they're playing baseball right now. But if my kid goes out to play baseball and he ends up playing baseball like he's supposed to play soccer, and he kicks around the baseball on the ground, he's playing the wrong game. He's doing the wrong thing. You got to pick up the ball. You got to put it in your glove, throw it, right? Like you got to play the game that you're playing. And I think what happens in our lives is when we're at home, we have one set of rules. a certain set of players, a certain set of ways to win, a playing field. Like there's all these elements of a game that we have in our house, right? That we have in our household that we work through and we operate. And then we go to work, there's a different set of rules, right? Work rules are different than home rules. There's different players. There's different ways to win. Like at work, if I'm extremely focused and getting things knocked out and I'm on my phone all day long, people are like, wow, look at how busy and productive Jason's being. Versus at home, if I'm on my phone the whole time, they're like, where are you? You're just not present with us right now. Like, does that make sense? Like, it's very strange to say what kills it for me in work and it really gets me some massive progress. If I do that at home, it's in conflict with the values of my house.
Yeah.
Think about that. If I just sat around at work and made never-ending eye contact with my whole staff, they'd be like, when are we going to get something done around here? But at the house, that's one of the most important things, is to spend time with those people doing things that they enjoy doing. They're very different games. And so what ends up happening is if you're at home and you're still working and trying to be productive, that's counterproductive to the game of being at home. So have you guys ever heard of this? If you have, do me a favor and say game confusion. If you've never heard of it, do me a favor and say new, N-E-W. I'd love to know if this is a new concept or new idea for you guys, because this idea of game confusion can be one of the biggest things to eliminating chaos if you can understand. Holly, do you have some other examples of kind of game confusion, how that's played out for you?
Yeah, for me, a big one is my relationship with my parents. When I was younger, I was a daughter and I would listen to the things that they would say to me.
You are still
and
a
that was my
daughter, correct?
role.
Like that's just to
I
be clear.
am still a daughter, but not the daughter they get to tell what to do anymore.
I see. Okay. Just checking.
I'm still a daughter, but now it's like I'm talking to them as I'm more their caregiver. And so it's not, and I'm an adult, like having that conversation as an adult with them is a big one. And so knowing who do I need to show up and when I show up with them, even though it's the same people, you still play different roles in different games with different people at different times.
100%. By the way, we need to take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk to you guys about what are some of the other things, like what creates conflict in your relationships using game confusion, because you just alluded to it there, Holly. And I think there's another thing called role confusion that also comes up and creates chaos in your home life. We're going to talk about that all when we come back after the short commercial break. Be right back. Would you like to have an even more beautiful mind? Well, we'd like you to have one, and we actually created a 7-day Beautiful Minds Challenge, which is a little bit of a choose your own adventure challenge for just 7 days. And I really think you can do anything for 7 days. It's definitely not easy, but it will be simple for you to get access to it. All you have to do is comment anywhere on this video or send me a message on social media that says 7-day, and I'll send you immediate access to not only our Beautiful Minds Facebook group, but also our Beautiful Minds Challenge, where you can go through 3 different areas: your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health, and get challenges in each of those areas that'll help you get a handle on each of those areas inside your life to give you more control over what you want to do every single day. So do me a favor, comment 7-day or send me a message on any social media, and I'll make sure I give you access to our exclusive community group as well as access to the challenge. Thanks so much, and now back to the show. Welcome back. We're talking about how do you eliminate chaos from your reality. And one of the things we talked about was something called game confusion, where you start mixing like home life and business life. They get blurred together, but the objectives are different in both. And Holly, you were just mentioning like, being a daughter versus giving advice to your parents. There's something that creates a lot of problems. And this usually happens around 17, 18 years old as children are starting to leave the home. If you're really lucky and happen to have your children with you in their 20s and 30s, it can still happen then too. Okay. No trigger warning on that one from some people. But the idea here is that when you create a role confusion in a psychology context, role confusion is when you try to parent your parent when you are still a child.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So like when you're 16, you think you have everything figured out. And you're like, Mom, Dad, you're a bunch of idiots. Let me tell you how life really works at 16 years old. What's happening is you're creating role confusion where you're trying to parent your parents. And this can be very difficult, especially as you mature in life. At some point, to your point, Holly, you might have aging parents, and you do have to more parent your parents as you're getting older and starting to learn more about as they're having different issues in their life or figuring that out. But it's like, giving advice. Like, I mean, I've been a professional like business consultant for over, I'm almost 14 years now, right? And I've been doing this for a long time. And so when you look at it, is like, when I started doing consulting, it was like, let me consult my parents on their business because I had some helpful things to do. It was like, it's awkward because you're like, well, you're my child. I used to give you advice. Now you're giving me advice. It starts to create this role confusion, and that can create chaos. The other thing that I've seen happen, and that's happened in my own family too, is like, if two siblings are arguing, or parents and a sibling are arguing, and one of the siblings steps in to assume kind of the parental role and help mediate between the other sibling and the parent. Now, all of a sudden, you're not a child anymore. You're a mediator, and that becomes confusing and can create even more chaos in your reality, right? Because you're assuming the wrong position in your game that creates more chaos. And so one of the like simple prescriptions that I want to just make sure that you do is just write out some of the games that you play in your life. Like, again, and name those games. So one of the common games, and maybe Holly, you can think of yours too, but as I'm talking about this right now, is like, one of the games that I play when I'm at work, I play the business owner game. Like, that's the game I play all day, every day. I am the business owner. I'm here hanging out. But I also have to play I want to play the approachable boss game. Like, yes, I'm a business owner and I have to make decisions for the business, but I also have to play the approachable owner manager game so that my team is not like, oh my God, why did we just not hear from you other than you like handle stuff and send us checks and whatever. Like, I want my team to know that I'm available and there. But even those games inside the business are very different. And then likewise, at home, I have the husband game. Like, my wife has a very specific set of needs that I need to meet as a husband. But those can often be different than what father Jason or dad Jason needs to have with my kids. And same thing, what can be in conflict is when I look at the relationship between me and Charity, my wife, versus me and my kids, Avon and Riker, sometimes even those are in conflict, right? Am I being a good husband in this moment, or am I being a good dad in this moment? And is there a way for me to be a good dad and a good husband at the same time and still win both games?
Yeah,
those should be very confusing. Heaven forbid I need to be a good friend to my guy friends that I have in my reality. Heaven forbid Charity and I need to be great couple friends to our other couples that we know in our reality. Or if I'm helping out with my son's baseball team, am I being a good, helpful coach in that process, right? There's so many different roles and realities you have to play. And even with your children, I'll leave this last thought and then throw out some, Holly, for you too, is even this last thought is, there's a time for me to be the dad that can help shape my children into the human beings that I want them to be. And there's a dad that just is silly and needs to let go and be absolutely playful. And even in that mode, playful, silly dad has to be different than the dad who enforces, are we eating dinner and putting our pajamas before you go to bed? Like, that has to be in there, but those are different dads with different roles. And I think sometimes when you get confused or frustrated, or you can start battles in your household, it's because you're confusing those games.
Yeah.
Holly, you on some games in business or in personal life?
Yeah, for me in business, there's also that game of what the guest sees in my company. So I have to go out and I have to be a completely different person when I'm talking to how
you relate to your clients and customers versus your staff, right?
Yeah. And kind of like the conversations and the schmooziness and, kind of just the banter that you have and walking around and talking to people, that's a very different conversation than I have. And even when I do it with the team, there's a coaching, Holly, like, hey, how about, we talk about some coaching moments, having those conversations. And to your point, like when we're doing one-on-ones or reviews, like you're showing up very differently in both of those kind of conversations. And then, when I'm going back to home, for me, it is how I talk to each one of my kids, because I've got 4 kids and they're all different ages. So, it's not even just like, what is the game I'm playing with my kids? It's my game that I'm playing with each one of them, because I may need to go from somebody that needs to help kid number 1 that is, life skills of, moving out on their own, to the kid number 2 that it's more like, how do I handle these situations, of problems that are going on at school. So there's it's even within even in the roles you're talking about, there's
the micro changes,
the micro ones. Yeah. That's what is really confusing, because you're doing a little turn every once in a while, and then the role of who am I?
Say it again. The role of what?
And the role of who am I? Like, who do I show up for myself?
Yeah. Yeah, like, can you not make sure that you completely are authentic to you in all those situations, even though the rules change every time you flip, and the rules could change from like while you're making dinner to like I'm the person making dinner. Like I would experience that to like, now I'm the dad for this kid. Now I'm the dad for this kid. Now I'm the spouse for this. And those games can change in seconds and create problems, because when you get confused about what game you're playing at what time, and you it's like you're schizophrenic because you have so many different personalities you've created in order to survive and win in each of those different scenarios. So guys, has this been helpful for you? Are you guys getting some good value out of talking about this? If you are, do me a favor and say value in the chat or say helpful. I'd love to find out if you guys have some other games or things that you can think of that are creating more and more challenges for you inside your reality. And I think going back to this initial idea of chaos, this initial idea of how do you remove and eliminate chaos is create organization and systems. And so again, I go back to the biggest prescription I can give you out of the entire podcast today is write down the games you play in any given day or any given week. Because again, as a parent who lives, with my wife and kids, we play a different game. When grandparents get involved, then I become the kid again. When I go over to Thanksgiving, like there's a funny like Saturday Night Live sketch. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Back Home Baller or something, where you go home and like as an adult, you go home and you don't do the dishes, and like your mom brings you drinks and you're like, I'm a kid again. And it's like I'm the back home baller. It's like all of a sudden you're being taken care of instead of you do all the taking care of everybody else when you're somewhere. And it is that idea that like the game gets switched, the roles get reversed. And the more you get clarity of those games, right? The reason why we understand that baseball is different than soccer, is different than football, is somebody took the time to write out the rules, write out the ways they score, write out the ways they win. And we're very clear on what baseball is. We're very clear on what soccer is. We're very clear on what football is. The problem for most of you though, and myself included, is that we don't take the time to write out those games. And so I would encourage you to do after the show is to write down a little bit and just say, hey, what are some of the games I played? That's good, level 1. Level 2 is, who are the players? What are some of the rules? Because if one of the rules are never-ending eye contact, that's an important rule to know. That's how I score some points with my wife, right? Is be able to make sure that we have, intentional connection, and sitting next to each other doesn't count. We have to, sit eye to eye. Like, what is it for you? What are the things that you can do to figure out how do you make your spouse happy? How do you make your kids happy? How do you keep yourself happy? How do you keep your business happy? And ultimately, how to become the person that you want to be by understanding those things. And if you can figure out ways to organize, whether it's your calendar or whether it's your games that you're getting confused, your organization depends on your success. And like I said at the beginning of the show, the richest people understand that the key is how many systems they have, how organized are they, how quickly can they get access to information. And if they can do that, it can be tremendous. So thank you guys for joining us on today's show. Holly, thank you for being here. I hope you guys have an incredible rest of your week.
Thanks
and I look forward to seeing you guys on another Beautiful Minds podcast really soon. Check them out and subscribe to our channel on all the channels, on Spotify, on iTunes, on anywhere that has podcasts. We'd love to see you. And do me a favor and rate the show if you enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Holly, for being on.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Bye
Thanks for joining us on today's show. If you want to get access to our 7-day Beautiful Minds Challenge, you can either comment below and just say 7-day, and I'll shoot you the information so you can get immediate access to that, or find me on any social media and just send me the message 7-day, and I'll make sure I get that out to you right away. And if you really enjoyed today's show, it would do me a huge favor if you went online, whether it was Spotify, Pandora, or iTunes, or any sort of podcast platform that you can find us on, and search for The Beautiful Minds Show, subscribe to our channel, and then make sure you give us a rating. Every time you give us a rating, it helps us get more eyeballs on our show and help more people have a more beautiful mind. Thanks again for joining us.